Anyway, as my thoughts were being stated, no, I like Loki simply because, he's the kind of guy that you can't trust. That he will stab you in the back at any point and any moment. However, right as the camera had cut me off, I was sitting there talking with Monster, and I think you should explain to people why you pick Ultron over even, a character like Magneto.
Well, the difference between Ultron and Magneto is that Magneto is not really an evil character. His motives, like his actions, are questionable, but he's a very heroic character. Ultron is just all bad all the time. The reason why I choose him as like my ultimate villain is simply because that he's probably the scariest villain in the Marvel Universe. Simply because he is relentless in his hatred for all living beings. I think if I had to compare Ultron with any other, like, artificial intelligence or robotic type villain from another, movie or comic or whatever, I would probably compare him with, like, the Skynet AI from the Terminator movies, or Shodan from the System Shock games. The fact that this is a guy who hates humanity, who hates all living things with a burning, blazing passion, and that he will stop at nothing to see us all either enslaved or just completely eradicated and destroyed in the most horrendous, hideous, and most agonizing way possible, so that he can rule in a dictatorship of robots and AI intelligences.
And plus,
That's why I pick Ultron.
And plus, they even stated on the Disney XD page that he believes that all sentient life should be above humanity, that they shouldn't be working for humans. And that's a very interesting aspect to add to Ultron, because it somewhat makes him sympathetic, but at the same time his methods overall kind of make him a butcher, if you want to put it in that sense.
I mean, that's why I think Ultron's my favorite villain, because he's the villain that really just scares me the most.
Yeah, he's like the stuff of nightmares. And I think
even more so than Thanos. I mean, even Thanos with his Infinity Gauntlet that can alter all perceptions of reality and atomic matter in the whole universe. I still don't think that holds a candle to Ultron.
And I mean, in terms of DC, there are many DC villains that I really like, but I think the one that always sticks out to me, and it's ironic because if I had to pick between Scarecrow or Doomsday, honestly, it's kind of a tough one, but I kind of draw it more towards, actually Scarecrow. Now, don't get me wrong, Doomsday is an unstoppable, creature. I mean, he can resurrect from the dead, he can regenerate lost limbs. It's like I said in my Doomsday video, he's like the Hulk on steroids. But I like Jonathan Crane more because, well, he's one of Batman's, more psychological villains, and also this is a guy that when you ingest his fear toxin, or basically it enters your system, it brings out the most heinous and most gruesome of your fears. And with Batman, I think one of the great scenes that I enjoyed was in Batman the Animated Series when Bruce Wayne's on the blimp, and the spirit of his father calls him a disappointment and calls him a coward and all that stuff, and then it turns into a skeleton. Or even the part in Arkham Asylum that, and I'm not a guy who jumps very easily, but I got a little bit jumpy and kind of creeped out when you're in the morgue sequence in Arkham Asylum and Batman opens up those two body bags and it's his parents. That actually made me a little bit unnerved, because it's just, that is what Scarecrow does. Scarecrow basically, he fucks with your mind. His whole goal in creating the fear toxin is to make you cower in the corner like a little baby, and he basically tries to He in a sense tries to break you mentally. He tries to drive you insane. And I love that about his character.
If you actually want to know the one person who is completely unaffected by the Scarecrow's fear toxin.
Please don't say Superman.
No, it's actually the Joker. The Nightfall comics, Scarecrow actually sprays Joker with his fear toxin, and then Joker just says, that tastes good. You got any more?
And and you know, it's funny because I love the line that Joker says afterwards to Batman. You know, he goes, having a hard time figuring out what's real and what isn't. He goes, just give in, Bats. He goes, just let your mind take it all in. And to me, that's what makes the Joker a cool character, because he breeds on chaos. But honestly, as biased as it sounds, I've always liked the Scarecrow, because to me, you know, while you got a character like Bane or Killer Croc, who's like, you know, very intelligent or just very savage and strong, you know, I like Scarecrow in the respect that, you know, that he doesn't have to beat you with physical strength. That he, you know, all he's got to do is bring out your worst fears, and more than likely, you know, you may be able to conquer him, you may not. But that's what I enjoy about his character. And I think that the 90s version in the animated series, I mean, it was okay. It was campy, it was hokey, but I really love the New Adventures version, where he looks, you know, kind of like a zombified Wild West preacher with the noose around his neck and that little wooden staff. I loved that version.
Not to mention, he was voiced by Jeffrey Combs, a.k.a. Herbert West from the movie Reanimator, and he just offered a really creepy sound and layer to his voice.
I mean, I love that version of Scarecrow, because when I think of Scarecrow from the comics monster, I think of a guy who, his appearance, his costume, looks very creepy or eerie. And the way that they made him look in Arkham Asylum, especially when you're on the fear toxin and his eyes are glowing like a jack-o'-lantern and stuff, you know, that created a very eerie vibe for Scarecrow, and I loved that.
Well, I think between the two villains that I would pick, I think it boils down to two villains for me, and very much like you. It's a choice between Deathstroke, the Terminator, and Bane. Deathstroke, Slade Wilson. He's one of the greatest, like, hand-to-hand, you know, sword fighters in the entire DC universe. He's
pretty much DC's version of, like, Deadpool and Captain America if they were ever put together.
Yeah, that's basically what he is, except his regenerative powers are nowhere near as potent as Deadpool. But Deathstroke, we're talking about a guy who is able to kick Superman's ass in hand-to-hand.
And plus, we're also talking about a guy who can actually, and it's been documented too, you can look this up, this is a guy who actually can use 90% of his brain capacity.
So, he's like one of the greatest strategists in the world. He can deduce, he can think about how to defeat an opponent,
I mean,
in like less than a minute.
He actually once took on the whole entire Justice League and beat nearly all of them. And that was just by himself. Now think about that for a second. You got guys like Green Arrow, Batman, Superman.